Have you ever just stopped and wondered, how do you think? I know it sounds a little meta, but our ability to reason is one of the most incredible things about us. But what even is reason when you get right down to it? Well, it turns out it's all about intuitions, and not just any old intuitions. We're talking about intuitions about reasons themselves. This is all part of a much bigger and, frankly, more fascinating story. Our ability to think about our own thoughts. This power to represent our own representations? It might just be the secret sauce to what makes us so smart. So here's our roadmap for this explainer. We're going to take a journey right into the architecture of a thought. We'll start at the ground floor with our basic, intuitive way of understanding the world, something called folk ontology. Then we're going to climb up a level to see how we represent not just things, but our ideas of things. From there, we'll dive into the almost psychic ability of mind reading. Then we'll look beyond that to other virtual worlds our minds cook up. And finally, we'll get to the very top, how this all leads to our ability to reason about reasons. All right, first things first. Before we can even talk about representing representations, we have to get a handle on how we represent the world at the most basic level. And that brings us to this idea of folk ontology. Okay, so humans have what scientists call a rich folk ontology. Don't let the fancy term throw you. It's just the common sense way we all intuitively categorize everything. Think of it as the built-in filing system in your brain. Now, this is totally different from a scientific ontology. For instance, science tells us a whale is a mammal, right? But our folk ontology might just file it under huge things that live in the ocean, right next to a giant squid. And while we all add more folders to our personal filing cabinet as we learn, the most basic ones, like living thing versus rock, are pretty much universal for all of us. And you can see these categories everywhere. We all just instinctively get the difference between a rock and a bird, between water and a hurricane, between the act of running and the quality of being grave. Now here's the crucial part. We seem to have different sets of intuitions for each of these categories. This suggests that our brain has specialized tools, different inferential mechanisms for dealing with each one. It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thinking. So what's really wild is that we humans don't just have all these categories for things in our heads. We also recognize that we're doing it. And this takes us to a whole other level of cognition. This slide right here shows the incredible leap our minds take, and it's a leap that seems to be uniquely human. See, we don't just have things in our mental world, we also have representations of those things. It's one thing to think about a rock, but it's another thing entirely to think about the idea of a rock. We can use numbers, sure, but we can also think about the symbols, the numerals we use to write them. We can feel the rain, and we can also have the distinct thought that it is raining. It's such a subtle difference, but it is absolutely profound. Now, these representations of representations have a formal name, meta-representations. The easiest way to think of them is just thoughts about thoughts. They form a very special category in our minds, and we have specialized mental tools just for handling them. And these higher-order representations, they aren't just some neat party trick. They are absolutely central to how we think, how we communicate, and how we live together in complex societies. Now, in our day-to-day lives, we don't really walk around talking about representations. We talk about specific kinds. So first, you've got the stuff inside your head, your beliefs, your hopes, your secret plans. Those are mental representations. Second, you have the ways we get those things out of our heads, the words we say, the pictures we draw, the hand gestures we make. Those are public representations. And finally, there are the ideas themselves, kind of floating free from any one person or single expression, like the story of Little Red Riding Hood or the concept of the Golden Rule. Those are abstract representations. Okay, so if we have these specialized tools for thinking about representations, what do they actually do? Well, the most studied, and maybe the most amazing one, is what scientists call mind reading. Now, hold on, this isn't science fiction. We're not talking about telepathy here. It's that everyday miracle of being able to guess what's going on in someone else's head, attributing beliefs and desires and intentions to them. And research shows this ability starts incredibly early. Let me walk you through this really cool study. 13-month-old babies watched a video of a hungry little caterpillar. First, they saw a hand put a piece of cheese behind a screen on the left and an apple behind a screen on the right. Then the caterpillar comes out, goes straight to the left, and starts nibbling the cheese. The babies saw this a few times, so it was crystal clear. This caterpillar loves cheese. Okay, then came the test. This time, the babies saw the hand put the cheese behind the right screen. But, and here's the crucial twist, The caterpillar only showed up after the food was already hidden. It didn't see the switch. So the big question is, what would the babies expect the caterpillar to do? Would they expect it to go where the cheese actually is, or to where the caterpillar thinks it is? The results were just remarkable. The babies acted just like you or I would. They stared longer, which in baby research is a sign of surprise, when the caterpillar went straight to the correct location on the right. So what does that mean? It means they expected the caterpillar to go to the left, where it had every reason to believe the cheese was, even though they, the babies, knew that belief was wrong. I mean, at just 13 months old, these infants understood that someone can have a false belief and will act on it. That's mind reading. And this isn't just something that happens in a lab. Think about a simple, everyday moment. You're in a doctor's waiting room. You see another patient sigh and look at their watch. You don't need to be Sherlock Holmes to figure out they're getting annoyed about the wait. They might glance over at you, and in that one look, they understand that you've understood their sigh. All of this incredibly complex, multi-layered mind reading happens in an instant, without you even trying. So how does our brain do this so effortlessly? Well, a really powerful way to think about it is that we're constantly managing mental files on everyone we interact with, and even on cartoon caterpillars, apparently. In these files, we store all kinds of info: their name, what they like, our history together. But crucially, these files also contain a meta-representational information. We have a little section in our Tim file for what we think is in Tim's mental files. But this mind-reading tool can't work alone. It has to connect with all the other tools in our mental toolbox. Let's say your friend Tim tells you he put 3 candies in a bag and then 5 more. Your mind-reading tool pulls the belief, I put in 3 and then 5 from your mental file on Tim. But to predict that Tim now thinks he has 8 candies, that tool has to pass the numbers 3 and 5 over to your internal calculator, your arithmetic module. The result, 8, then gets sent back and filed away in your Tim file as his new predicted belief. All these different parts of our mind are constantly chattering away with each other. But this incredible ability to think about thoughts isn't just for reading other people's minds. It's the foundation for so many other uniquely human abilities. And this takes us into what we can call virtual domains, worlds that are built not out of things, but out of representations, like numbers and explanations. Let's start with numbers and numerals. This distinction shows us 3 really important things. First, our gut feelings about numbers themselves aren't the same as our intuitions about the symbols we use to write them. Second, our intuitions about the symbols often come from the system itself. For example, we feel like 1 million is a big, round number, but that roundedness is just a feature of our decimal system, not of the number itself. And third, and this is key, even though we're thinking about the symbols, this can still give us real insight into the numbers. You know instantly that 900 is 3 times 300, a fact about numbers that you get so easily because of how our numerals are set up. And we see this exact same pattern with explanations, which are just another kind of representation. Think about it. Your intuition about whether an explanation is good or bad is totally separate from your feelings about the thing being explained. We judge an explanation on its own terms. Is it simple? Does it hang together well? Is it coherent? But here's the magic. By focusing on finding a good explanation, we end up learning a ton more about reality. Our ability to judge the representation helps us understand the world. And this brings us to a really powerful idea. These meta-representational tools in our brain are actually very specialized. Their actual domain, the thing they're literally designed to work on, is narrow. They're just about representations. But by giving us information about those representations, they indirectly give us information about everything else. So while their real job is narrow, they have a much, much wider virtual domain that covers everything those representations can be about, which is, well, everything. And this all leads us to the final and maybe the most important point of all, that reasoning itself is a meta-representational ability. It's about using our intuitions about a very specific type of representation. So, if you suggest the mind is made of all these specialized tools or modules, you run smack into a big problem. How could reasoning possibly be modular? Reasoning seems to be the ultimate general-purpose tool, right? I mean, humans can reason about literally anything, from using astronomy and geometry to figure out the Earth's circumference, to using history and chemistry to debate the age of an ancient artifact. How could one specialized tool handle all of that? Well, the answer lies in that distinction we just made between a real and a virtual domain. The argument is that reasoning is based on a specialized meta-representational tool.
Its real domain isn't the whole world. Its real domain is actually much, much narrower. It's just about reasons. And what are reasons? They're a type of representation. This is the key that unlocks the whole puzzle. Because reasons themselves can be about anything. The specialized tool that processes them gets a universal reach. As the source material puts it, reasoning can be both quite specialized in its operations and quite general in its import. In other words, it has a very specific job to do, evaluating reasons, but because those reasons can be about the entire universe, its impact is limitless. And this leaves us with a really mind-bending final concept: virtual domain generality. It's the solution to the great paradox of human reason. The incredible universal power of our minds isn't achieved through some master of all trades general processor. Instead, it comes from a highly specialized key that can unlock every single door. A tool designed for one simple thing, thinking about reasons, that ends up giving us the ability to think about everything. The architecture of a single thought, it turns out, is the blueprint for understanding the whole cosmos.